for our 2016 class of leaders. And we really appreciate your patience and your time joining us today. My name is Ann Campion-Riley. I'm the current president of ACRL. The slide says I'm an associate director at the University of Missouri, and I'm actually currently the interim dean of libraries. We're here today to answer your questions that I think you know, and I'll let the ACRL staff introduce themselves also. We have Mary Ellen Davis.
Hello. Thank you all for coming. I'm the executive director of ACRL. Mary Jane Truck will introduce herself.
Mary Jane, do we have you?
Sorry, I just unmuted my mic. Hi, everybody. I'm Mary Jane Petruski. I'm the ACRL Executive Director.
Great. And these two are obviously very key contacts, and most of you probably already know them. We also have two more ACRL staff joining us today. We have Alison Pains, who's the ACRL Program Officer and ACRL Program Officer. And we have Lois Sharp, ACRL Program Coordinator. Alison, can you say hi?
Oh, everyone.
And Lois.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Great. So we know that all of you out there, at least I hope all of you out there, have had a chance to go to listen to the recording of the virtual orientation for our 2016 Leaders class. And as that recording mentioned, we have the Leadership Council coming up at ALA Annual in Orlando, and we're combining this year the membership meeting with the Leadership Council. Those are both going to be at the Hyatt in the Regency Ballroom P. At 1 o'clock, we'll have the actual Leadership Council meeting, and then we'll have the welcome reception following that from 3 to 4 in the next door ballroom. So we have time now. In fact, our main agenda for today is to have questions from you on things that you heard during the recorded presentation. And it looks like we have about 30 people participating today, which is great. So I hope we are going to have a lot of lively conversation. And let me start off with just a few questions people have asked. Do I need to attend the conferences in person is a question that we get. And the answer is, well, we really hope you will, but we do know that some groups simply can't, and so virtual meetings are permitted. Mary Ellen, do you want to fill us in a little bit on all the rules surrounding virtual meetings?
Certainly, and Alison and Lois will jump in. I'm sorry, I'm getting a lot of feedback, so if it sounds like I'll go in, but I'm not quite sure how I'm coming through. So I hope it isn't too bad. But at the ALA conference, there is not a ton of support for blended meetings. There are a few Skype kits that can be checked out if you make that request by the AV deadline from the ALA Conference Services Office. But what we've done for the board when we've had someone that can't come is we look for someone that has unlimited minutes on their phone, and we just put the cell phone down on the table and dial that person in. So most committees figure out a way to either do their work virtually or separate out the tasks among who can be there in person and what they can do in person. And then the other work is done virtually by those who are not in attendance. So the options are sort of check to see whether Conference Services has a Skype kit or see what options are available with the different devices that the different members of the committees have in terms of cell phone call-in or Skype. The Hilton Hotel, we've just been told in Orlando, is going to have free Wi-Fi in the meeting rooms. ALA negotiated that on members' behalf. So if your meeting is there as well or in the convention center, you could certainly use a device. I've brought in board members by FaceTime, by cell phone, or by Skype, just depending on different people's capabilities. Lois is the one that you would contact if you want to have a virtual meeting. in between conferences, and she can get you on the schedule and host your virtual meeting just as she's doing for us today. And Elois or Allison, do you have anything you want to add to that?
We were pretty clear, Mary Ellen, in regards to the blended meetings. As you stated, that Skype kits are available. If individuals choose to have blended meetings at the virtual meeting, we do recommend that they request that particular AV when they actually request their meeting, so that all that information can be submitted simultaneously.
Yeah, that's a good point. I should add that while we would love to be able to support blended meetings, even if it just turns out the day before you need a blended meeting, finances are a reality and we have to pay attention to that. And it's not always inexpensive to try and pull these kits together, and that's why not every hotel will necessarily have free Wi-Fi in it. It's just what we're able to negotiate or what we're able to afford when we're negotiating the contracts. But we'll do our best to support you and appreciate all that you can do by sharing your cell plan or your data plan to advance it to the committee.
Great, thank you so much. Would any of our participants, our committee chairs, our new leaders, would any of you like to ask a question now before I go through some more on the slide here?
Oh, I think there's a question about LibGuides, and Alison and Megan have a schedule for when those will be available. And for those of you that don't know, ACRL has signed an agreement with the company that provides the LibGuides, and they very generously agreed to provide them to the association free of charge for the association's use. So if your committee would like to use a LibGuide, we are going to make that available, but I am not sure the timeline of that. So Alison, if you could take the timeline piece, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Right now, we are letting any committees actually use LibGuides. So if you're interested in using LibGuides, just go ahead and send me an email, which I'll go ahead and type in the chat box.
Rhonda, I'm trying to understand your question. So I'll take a stab at it, and then if this isn't quite what you mean, please elaborate. But ALA Connect is sort of the official place where we want to see your agendas and your meeting highlights posted so that anybody can look at those and so they can be archived. Because Allison has been working with University of Illinois, where we have a contract for archives for the American Library Association, to be sure that those key documents are saved and archived for us. So if you're using Google Drive for your editing work and working back and forth, that's great. But if any finished documents, your meeting highlights and your agendas, if you could be sure to put those in ALA Connect, that would be very helpful. Yeah, and I think, Allison, if you have anything to add, or Mary Jane, but in my mind, the two key documents are your agendas and your report out of what happened from your meetings. And then if there's some document that needs to be shared, like if you're a committee that's working on a standard or a guideline or the legislative agenda, there's other routes to get those approved by the board, and then they'll be shared out through the ACRL Insight or CNRL News and other places like that. But think of ALA Connect as a bit of a public space, since all of our meetings are open meetings by ALA policy. It's a place where people could go to find out what your group is working on or where a draft is, where the things that are in Google Drive, the whole membership wouldn't have as easy an access to that. So try and be mindful of, if someone were looking to understand the work your committee is doing or to get an overview, the first place that they might go would be the website, and then get a link to the Connect post where you'd have some of those updates. The LibGuide thing for internal group work, I think we're going to be experimenting with LibGuides. One use I thought of them was more external, so but it certainly could be internal. I know the arts section has for years done a cultural guide to the conference city where ALA Midwinter and annual conferences are held, and I think they've often done them in sort of a Word document, although they may have moved beyond that. And I was thinking a LibGuide would be a perfect place to have that kind of a resource for people that are traveling to a new city where they can put restaurants and things like that. But you may have some ideas, Cynthia, about how you use a LibGuide for internal work, and it's like I would call this a great experimentation time. So if that's the way you can use it, and then you share your broader document out through ALA Connect, that'd be fine too. Oh, and I see Jennifer has a question about award committees. It's not my experience that the award committees meet at annual unless they'd like to for fun or to celebrate, but you're right, their work is done at Midwinter or virtually, and so there's no requirement that they have to meet at annual conference. And Rhonda was asking about adding a committee member. The appointments to committees are the right of the president and the vice president, depending on what time of the year we are. So if someone resigns from your committee, if you could let your staff liaison know, then we'll make sure that the vice president and president know of this. And if you have a recommendation, we can certainly pass that recommendation along to, right now it would be Anne or Irene Harold. But the committees are created by the board of directors, and the appointments are made by the president and vice president, although they certainly welcome suggestions, but we can facilitate getting that replacement that way. And Anne, you may want to comment in terms of how you did appointments and working with recommendations.
Yes, we really do appreciate recommendations because those of you who are doing the work obviously know the most about who is interested. In many cases, you might have people that you know of that have been involved in the sort of work before. You might have a person who brings some special resources. So we really do welcome those recommendations. It is important to keep in mind that they are recommendations, though, and we do have many, many volunteers typically for all of our committees. So there might be people who were had volunteered to serve on that committee, really want to, and we might go to them first. So even though we really value your recommendations, it might not be 100% that we recommend exactly who, or that we appoint exactly who you recommend, but we really do value those recommendations. And whatever point in the cycle it is, if somebody leaves, we will, especially if the chair reminds us or informs us, we will consider appointing additional members or replacement members, I guess would be more accurate. Now I see another question from Diana. My committee didn't have a vice chair. Would you want to bring one on board? Is that something you handle yourself? Well, you could certainly ask one of your committee members if he or she was willing to be a vice chair. Otherwise, if you wanted to appoint somebody who could be a vice chair, see the question we just answered, bring that forward to your liaison and we can handle that. Otherwise, I think you can ask one of your committee members to be a vice chair yourself. That's perfectly appropriate. And yes, you will need to update your liaison so we can update the committee rosters that the vice chair is chosen.
And I would add to that Irene has been making appointments, and I apologize, Dana, I don't have everybody's committee assignment memorized, but it's quite possible that Irene Harold, our vice president, has already appointed a vice chair for your committee. So Alison would have a record of all that if it's not up on the website. I believe future rosters are listed as people accept the appointment. So what we want to avoid is two people being asked to fill the same role. So if you could just check in with Alison and let's see where we are with Irene's appointment.
Very good point. Very good point. Thank you, Mary Ellen.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the answer to the WordPress question from Kenny. Allison, do you know that one?
I actually don't usually work with WordPress. That's usually the section. Mary Ellen, do you have insight on this?
Which is going to migrate this fall to a new platform. It will be called ALA Connect, but Higher Logic is going to do it, and then everything is there in one place. Sections, as membership communities sometimes want a site that they can more easily update with all the different kinds of things that sections do. But for committees, we would prefer that you use the official committee platform in Connect and put your official documents there. If there's something you really need to do in WordPress because your committee is so different, I mean, I know we have committees like the Research and Scholarly Environment Committee that has, a Scholarly Communications Toolkit and a lot of resources on the ACRL website. So that's certainly something you can talk to your staff liaison and board liaison about if you have a special circumstance. But generally, we don't just provide WordPress sites for every single committee. And then Kenny had Jamie, I guess, had a question about chairs typically cycling off. It happens both ways.
Right. This is Ann again. Some people, move on to other interests after they've chaired a committee. Others prefer to stay on the committee or be reappointed. So it really, as Mary Ellen says, it really just varies whether the chairs cycle off the committee after they are chaired. If you have a specific situation in mind, I'd suggest you ask your liaison, and certainly it's another situation where we'd want to check with the vice president who's appointing to see if a person has indicated that they want to come back on a committee. Like I said, if you have a specific question about an individual, it would be good to ask it. And now she says no, it was just a general question. So it's not expected either way. They could cycle off or stay on. It just doesn't matter. Many do cycle off. Oh, Mary Ellen, why don't you take the money question? Mary Ellen, why don't you take the money question?
Okay, my mic is on now. Sorry, I was giving a whole lecture to myself about past chairs. So I'll go back to that only if there's time. Unallocated money which could be okay. So there is more money beyond the $150 you have if you have an innovative project or need for something special, and then you can work with your staff and board liaison to bring a special request to the board of directors if it's for a big project. If it's a relatively small administrative amount of money, then talk to your staff liaison who can talk to me, and we can see whether it's something that rises up to the board's need to know. But if it's a big thing, like you want to develop a database, it's accessible to members or non-members on a content issue, that might be the kind of resources that we're starting to talk about, the big bucks there. If it's like, oh, you want to, have I can't even think of something, but need to get something off cycle that's, a smaller amount of money, then that's something we could probably just work with you to make sure you have it. So I'd say think first of what it is you're trying to accomplish and what you need, then talk to your staff liaison who can advise you whether that's sort of an administrative thing that we can easily approve or whether it's a bigger picture thing that we want to get the board's input on. Does that answer the question, or if you have more money questions, I'm happy to try and elaborate. Okay. And then to answer Jamie's question about past chairs, actually, it's interesting because a bit of history, when the board created vice chairs and chairs, the purpose was to try and provide some continuity on a committee so that these projects could actually be accomplished over a multi-year period. And we did seriously consider having past chairs the way we do in sections. And there was some concern that it's difficult for people to make a 3-year commitment, and that a 2-year commitment was more reasonable. So, you know, if there's a groundswell of interest from members that they really think they need a past chair appointment, the board can certainly consider changing that. But that's just a bit of history on why we didn't create a formal past chair position when we started. Dan, I have a question. Talk a little bit about work plans.
We could talk a little bit about work plans. I think I'm going to go ahead and take this question from Krista about being a co-chair. Being a co-chair, I think, is different from being a vice chair because the co-chairs are both sharing. Effectively, you're just sharing the work, and it's possible that both people co-chairing are not going to want to do that for more than 1 year. So you really probably should also have a vice chair or even co-vice chairs. Does that answer your question, Krista? Co-chair is different than a vice chair. Okay. Other thoughts on that, or we can go on and talk about work plans if people are interested?
I mean, the co-chair position, that when there are co-chairs, everything Ann said is absolutely true. There still may be a vice chair, and so the expectation when someone is asked to be a vice chair is the expectations that they will share in their second year. So if there are co-chairs, the expectation will be those co-chairs retire at the same time, and then the vice chair assumes the chair position. Sometimes people aren't able to follow through on their second year commitment, so there's always exceptions to the rule, but that's the general way things have been. And sometimes co-chairs have been created so the individual asked to be chair can only do it if they partner with someone, because then they can divide up the work, and then it's a more manageable volunteer commitment. Because there's very few things that we have designed that have to be vice chairs. Normally those requests have come from the members as a way to best manage their commitments and time.
And then Krista asked if she wants to continue, could you just fill out the volunteer form? Certainly, that would be one way to do it and indicate you're interested in continuing as a chair. The other thing I would do is I would email, I guess it will be, Cheryl Middleton will be our president-elect, I think, after Irene Harold. So Irene has made, will be making appointments in the coming year. So just for the coming year, it would be Irene Harold, and her contact information is online. I'm hearing somebody keying loudly. If you could mute your mic while you're keying, that would be really helpful. Thank you all. Mary Jane, would you like to talk, or Mary Ellen, either one, would you like to talk about work plans?
I think you want to talk about work plans?
Can everybody hear me okay? I hope there's not a lot of feedback. So the work plans are probably the first deadline that's coming up for everybody. If you're attending the committee's meeting at annual or the virtual meeting before annual, I expect there would be some discussion of potential projects for FY17. So the current committee chair and vice chair may have already made some good progress on next year's work plan. So if I'm recalling the video that you looked at correctly, I think a draft of your work plan is due to your board liaison, and that person is going to show up on your roster on the website when that appointment's made. So you work with your board liaison and your staff liaison to kind of review your plans for the next year, and we'll give you some feedback if if things aren't clear. And then I think the goal is to have, and your board liaison actually is responsible for approving your work plan. And this applies to all committees except for goal area committees. And those plans actually come forward in September at a meeting where the board and all the groups talk about them. But by August, and I don't have that date right in front of me, Alison probably knows what it is, you have your work plans approved and you can get started on your projects for the coming year. A piece of the work plan is the annual report. So the outgoing chair will probably be working on a kind of a summary and a reflection on the work of the committee in the previous year. So those two pieces come together and get submitted in their final form in August.
Drafts are due July 8th, and the final is due August 12th. And the forms are available online at the ACRL website, so those should be easy to find. We've also had a question about liaisons, and Alison tells us that, oh, just corrected the date, work plan draft is due July 22nd, the report draft is due July 8th. But on liaisons, the liaisons committees, the grants committee, the training and development committee, and the coordinating committee should submit work plans. Those committees do need to, but just individual liaisons do not. Is that right, Alison? Great, great. Other questions on work plans or related things about your obligations after conference? We have a question from Christopher. When will staff and board liaisons be assigned? Certainly before annual, if they haven't already been.
We should have staff liaisons, and they're probably on the future rosters. And I know Irene Harold, the vice president, is always responsible for making the board liaisons. And I know she was working on it because she tries to, every vice president waits until the elections are final. We try to assign liaisons to sections where there is not a history of working with a section. And we try to assign liaisons to committees where there is some expertise in that area if possible. So I don't know whether we have received her final listed liaisons. She may still be working on it, but as Ann said, the roster should be updated prior to annual.
And we will certainly be sure that chairs are informed if there are any changes after those first assignments are made, which does occasionally happen, not always, but it does sometimes happen based on schedules and, as Mary Ellen says, expertise and history, which we do try to take into account up front. So yeah, checking the roster prior to annual should work well. There's a question on the slide here about how should the membership group best use ALA Connect, and I think we've kind of covered that as to what the best practice is for posting kind of your official documents in Connect. I know some groups have used Connect for virtual votes. There is the ability to use it for discussions and things also. Again, sometimes people find other tools sufficient for that, and that's fine. I really encourage you all to post photos in ALA Connect. That's so helpful at conference for people to be able to see, at least get a hint of what you look like if it's someone that you don't know. That is kind of a welcoming thing, and it does help with finding people. When you're at the Leadership Council, you will be seated with your staff and board liaisons. At least we try to do that for the table seating at the actual Leadership Council itself. So you'll get a chance to meet and talk with people there, and even your vice chair if you don't already know him or her. So that can be. So Leadership Council is really a great opportunity, and I think as we've covered in the virtual orientation, it's confusing sometimes to people. Why am I here? What are we doing? And so we are really trying to be responsive and be sure people can get as much as they need to out of Leadership Council. Other questions anybody has? We've still got 20 minutes here, just about. Elizabeth Berman says, I don't know what I don't know yet. Well, at least you know that. So that's always the first step in learning, right? Is to know that there's a lot to learn. We all feel that way, I think, when we're faced with some of these tasks. Elizabeth, have you been on Leadership Council before? Have you ever been a committee chair, either section or anything before? Well, special welcome to you then. We really value first-timers and people who are new to the structures. That really those are the you guys are the future of the organization. So we really welcome you. And once again, thank everyone for being willing to serve the organization in this way. Diana says, thanks for the overview. Thank you again for coming, Diana, and thanks for your service too. Wow. Well, Carrie, we're looking forward to having you too. And Krista said there's a lot to learn, and I'm glad too that the information is on YouTube. That does make it more accessible, and it's easy to find when you do need to find something. YouTube has really become such a useful tool for all of us, I think. Okay, and thanks to you, Nancy. While we're waiting for a last few questions here, like I say, we still have time. I would like to point out that we have a survey to help us evaluate this orientation to see if this virtual thing is working well. We'd really like you to complete that survey by the end of this month, by May 31st. As I said, we really are hoping that this virtual thing works for people, because we know there is a lot to learn, and it's so hard to do orientations when we're all geographically diverse, and we hope that this is a good way to do it. Teresa asked if we could share the survey link in the comments so we can click on it to access. I'm guessing that Alison or somebody could do that pretty easily.
I think Alison already did.
All right, I see it right there. Excellent, thank you. Mary Ellen, anything you'd like to add?
Well, we're just really excited to have you on the leadership position, and wanted to make sure that you had this opportunity to meet some of us virtually. I want to share and thank you and welcome to the organization. if you're able to come to Orlando, you'll quick preview of Leadership Council. We'll be hearing a little bit more about the ACRL 2017 conference and our goal to raise some additional scholarship money to bring more people to conference than ever before. We have budgeted more money than ever before of ACRL's funds to bring the scholarships, and we really appreciated the number of individual donations that came in for the last conference. We were able to award, I think, $56,000 in donations from individuals and over 179 scholarships. So Lori Getch, the scholarship chair, will be telling us about that. And I believe we're also going to have a chance to talk about a bit on the future of academic libraries in terms of the ALA Task Force on Accreditation has asked ACRL to provide some comments on what do we think the skills and competencies are needed for academic librarians in the future. So that we have a board working group who's doing that and just sent a survey out to section, interest group, and committee chairs to get their opinion. And I think from there they're going to be doing a draft that we'll have some more time to talk about Friday afternoons. We really do value all of you as sort of a think tank for ACRL, and we reach out to you for your opinions and thoughts, and the board uses those to shape their thinking around things like strategic planning and what we need to be doing to better serve the members.
Excited about this. It seems like almost every year some comments come up about how library schools should be, or iSchools, I suppose, too, we should mention now, should be doing something differently, or people don't address this or don't address that. So I'm looking forward to having this opportunity to, as Mary Ellen described, use Leadership Council as a think tank and to give you all a voice in ACRL's response to the accreditation questions.
Yeah, I would point out that in the evaluations, there's a disconnect that people come to Leadership Council thinking it's going to be orientation. So we really are trying to separate out orientation by doing this virtually. And please include in the survey any suggestions you have for separate orientations that might be helpful to you if there's a topic you'd like us to go more in depth on or something like that. But when you come to Leadership Council, it's going to be more focused on sharing information about the organization in terms of its moving forward in the strategic direction, or getting your input, or sharing membership survey results, as opposed to here's how you fill in a work plan or something like that. Because we have a variety of people at Leadership Council, sections, interest groups, discussion groups, committees, chapters, and each of those groups works a little bit differently with the organization. So we try to find a topic that will be of interest to all. But we are always happy to answer orientation questions, both individually or, as I say, if there are topics that a lot you have interest in, we can look at doing some more recordings.
And I would just add to what Mary Ellen said. If you know of anybody who wasn't able to watch the virtual orientation, encourage them to do it before Leadership Council. We always evaluate things because we're good assessment folks, right? And I got such a kick out of the evaluations from Leadership Council last year, and I know you all know what teaching evaluations can be like. And so this was just, a little bit like that, where we had some that said, boy, I really appreciated it when Ann diverged from the agenda and talked about the structure. And then we had other ones that said, why did that person take an extra 10 minutes to talk about the structure? People here already know that. So it was kind of fun. But Mary Ellen's right, we're somewhere, we have all levels of knowledge about the organization within the Leadership Council, within all of the leadership. So we really encourage you to take the opportunity to learn a little bit about the structure if you think you need to know that ahead of time, because we are going to assume that knowledge at the Leadership Council. But nevertheless, we always encourage questions. There are no dumb questions. If you need to know something, just ask it. So I'll wait about 2 more minutes here for our final questions. We've got actually 9 minutes by my clock here. But there's no reason to keep you guys on the line if we've answered all the questions.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any typing in the chat box. I would say that we have come to a natural stopping point. So I want to thank everybody for coming and thank Anne for making time to host this session for us. I think it's so nice for the members to get a chance to interact directly with the president, and often at conference we all go into our own meeting schedules and it's hard to see everybody. So I appreciate everybody making time for this, and I hope that we'll see a majority of you in Orlando.
And I just realized my mic was muted. Thanks everyone for attending. I think, as Mary Ellen said, we've reached a natural stopping point, and I won't repeat my thing about another few minutes for questions. So I think we've answered a few questions for today, and if you think of things after this, don't hesitate to email and ask them. Thanks everyone, and we all look forward to Orlando. I hope the weather's good. Bye-bye.